All right, here are three things you need to know right now. The January jobs report blows past expectations with 517,000 workers added and hugely complicating the picture for the Federal Reserve. Is this a big shock or just a noisy number? We'll discuss.
And Apple earnings coming up sour, missing expectations on the top and bottom lines. We're going to break down the number for the iPhone maker shortly.
And Amazon earnings are thing three, as they've been a bit cloudy as online store sales came up short of Wall Street estimates. So what does that mean for the consumer? We're going to dive into that and much more. But first, let's get into the first thing here this morning, the first big thing that we have been keeping our eyes on here, and it has been the jobs report as well here. And Julie, as we're continuing to really kind of parse through some of the numbers here, I mean, the growth that we had seen far surpassing what the big expectation was coming into this.
Yeah, we were just looking at these charts here. If we look at the 3-day, as our Jared Blicker was doing earlier, that shows exactly what happened from the Fed meeting the other day and then the trajectory until now. So basically, we have now come full circle since then. If you look at the futures as well, not quite the same magnitude, right, but directionally going back in that direction. So that's effectively what we're seeing here. If we look at some of the heat maps and look at the NASDAQ 100 here, which is where we are, the numbers on the bottom are mostly in the red, and that's where we find a lot of the tech stocks this morning after that number, and also after, obviously, a lot of numbers from the individual companies as well, Saz.
All right, let's take through these. Thing number one you need to know today, jobs jump, coming in well above the 188,000 expected, and unemployment rate falling to 3.4%. Guys, let's try and dive into these numbers. Real blowout report here. I really like the analysis moments ago from Joe Brasuelos and Lauren Goodwin they provide to us, but a big report, certainly pushing back, I think, on some of this hope or hopium in the market that we might get that Fed pivot and get it very soon. This report suggests maybe that's not going to happen. You know, one of the other things that was mentioned by Joe when we had him on set here was that this is the lowest unemployment rate reading when taken out to the thousandth of the decimal point that we've seen in our lives here, at least anybody that was here on this set. So that is significant. However, it's also significant from the fact that Fed Chair Jay Powell, waking up seeing this number, perhaps looks at it and says, okay, well, looks like we can do a little bit more work on this, and that's certainly rattling the markets, as Julie was just breaking down at the touchscreen a moment ago.
Yeah, and so, we were just talking to Joe Brasuelos and Lauren Goodwin a little bit ago and their reaction to these numbers. And Joe's message was really that while this is a big number, it's not as big as it appears to be. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some other commentary on Twitter and the like as well, including from economist Justin Wolfers, that if you look at the hourly earnings number, yes, it was up 4.4% year over year, but if you look at the month-to-month change, it was 0.3%, bang in line with estimates. And so that's really the number that the Fed is keying in on. If, in fact, it is trying to attack inflation, maybe doesn't change the trajectory as much as the market seems to think it is today. So I think maybe it's a little bit more nuanced than that big 517 is on the surface.
Yeah, leisure and hospitality really sticking out, creating more, about 128,000 jobs in the month. That is a huge gain, but maybe not surprising, Brad. We got some really good earnings results from these airlines, and all of the commentary that we heard on forward bookings into the spring was pretty strong. So clearly, at least that sector is not preparing for an economic downturn.
Yeah, the travel leisure space has been talking about a golden age of travel since October at this point, and for some of them signaling that demand that was holding strong even since the summer of last year. So where does that put us now as it relates to the employment situation here? If you're going to continue to see leisure and hospitality try to rebound as best as possible, and it is doing so, largely has been outpacing because it's, in the job gains at least, largely because it's had the farthest way to come back, then where does it get into some of the other elements of the economy? In those consumer discretionary sectors, that's one element that I would continue to watch out for here. When you have companies that are, they've got these large, massive storefronts and footprints, and they're saying to themselves, okay, do we really need to hire more workers right now, or can we just reinvent the retail experience? And especially in some of those categories that aren't performing well, why would they be compelled to open up more jobs? And at the end of the day, does that mean that for some of the employees that are there, perhaps they'll get paid more, but that doesn't mean that they're going to have a lesser load in their workday as well.
I really like what Joe Bersuelo said about why these tech layoffs are not showing up in these jobs numbers. The headlines on jobs hasn't been good, notably from tech, but also increasingly manufacturing. He said they're still getting hired. They may not be getting hired at the same rate, but this pool of employees, a lot of smaller companies have not had access to them at lower wages or had access to them at all. So maybe they're getting hired right away.
If worse comes to worse and you're a coder and you get laid off, you can always go work on a cruise ship. They're looking for people.
Or create your own business.
Sure, exactly.
I don't do cruise ships, so I find it hard to work. But hey, more
you
power
can work
to
at a hotel. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be floating.
That's true. That's true. There's a lot of good hotels.
Be sure to take Spirit on your next cruise.
What's that?
Take Spirit.
Oh, no, never.